The story begins with one of our protagonists, called Teju, rushing into the lab to tell our main protagonist, called Senku, that he wants to confess his feelings that he's held in for 5 years to Yuzuriha, his crush. Senku tells him he is not interested in his illogical decisions. However, he offers him a love potion to boost his confidence, but Teju discards it, saying he won't rely on cheap tricks. As he goes out, the love potion explodes, and Senku explains that it was actually gasoline, but he was 100% sure Teju wouldn't take it. Outside, Teju meets up with Yuzuriha to confess his feelings to her. Meanwhile, the others wager on the outcome of his proposal. At the moment Teju finally puts aside his doubts, he is interrupted by a ray of light. The light shines on the entire world, petrifying any human it touches. The world immediately falls into disarray. Only animals are spared. Teju notices he is still conscious. He vows to stay sane until he can confess his feelings. Time passes. Days, decades, centuries go by until the world plunges back into the Stone Age. One day, Teju suddenly breaks free from his petrification. As he explores the stone world, he remembers the good times with his dear Yuzuriha, who he finds still standing by the camphor tree. He confesses his feelings to the still petrified Yuzuriha, and as he goes close to her body, he notices a message carved into the tree. He finds Senku waiting for him. Senku explains to him that the date is October 5th, 5738. 3,700 years have passed since they turned to stone. Senku reveals he was counting seconds while being petrified until he broke free. He takes Teju to his base where they begin to invent tools for survival in the stone world. The next day, they go to a cave where Senku explains that the reason they were the first to wake up has something to do with the cave. Senku explains that the liquid dripping from the cave is nitric acid, which might be responsible for corroding their petrification. Senku has already started experimenting with the liquid but hasn't succeeded. They decide to make alcohol using wild grapes. Senku handles the brainy stuff while Teju does the manual labor. 3 weeks later, they have acquired alcohol, so they start distilling it. Senku's clay pot is not up to the task, so they take the slower approach. After a year, they succeed in creating a mixture which they use to depetrify a bird. Teju decides to revive Yuzuriha next with the fluid. He stops halfway, suddenly realizing she would be revived naked. He tries to take her petrified body back to their camp. However, on their way, a lion begins chasing them. The lions keep up with the chase, so Teju hands Yuzuriha's body to Senku in an act of self-sacrifice. Senku disagrees with his plan, so they continue their escape. Teju decides to use the revival fluid on a strong fighter so he can save them. The fighter, known as Shishio Tsukasa, breaks out of his petrification and defeats the lion with brute force. He tells them he'll protect them henceforth. Teju is glad to have a dependable comrade, but Senku has his doubts about their newfound ally. At the base, they introduce themselves to each other. Tsukasa volunteers to be the hunter of the team. His amazing hunting skill enables the team to eat better meat now. Senki tells the group they need calcium carbonate in order to move on with their advancement. He tells Teju to pick up seashells which they would crush to obtain its carbonate. Tsukasa narrates to Senku a childhood story where he was gathering seashells to make a necklace for his sick sister. He was beaten by a man who accused him of stealing the shells. After the story, he smashes the head of a petrified person. He tells Senku he must not revive the corrupt adults who would eventually taint their free paradise. Senku stops him, saying he is going to revive every single person in the world. Senku realizes that Tsukasa is bad news, so he plots to keep him under control by hiding the secret of the revival fluid. However, Teju runs in, saying he has gotten a full pot of fluid from the cave. Senku has no choice but to tell Tsukasa about the cave. While he goes to the cave, Senku uses the opportunity to carry out the mixing, so Tsukasa doesn't see him do it. They quickly pour the processed revival fluid on Yuzuriha, but she doesn't depetrify instantly. Senku explains the science behind the fluid before Yuzuriha breaks out of the rock. Tsukasa comes back from his smashing spree to confront the group, who now take him as a murderer. Teju dashes to attack him, but Senku knows Tsukasa would kill him instantly, so he shoots an arrow between them. This disorients Tsukasa, who still manages to land a powerful hit on Teju. Tsukasa notes that Teju did not actually attack him, so he explains that he doesn't hurt people no matter what. Tsukasa is stunned by his words, so he tests him, threatening to kill Yuzuriha. Teju takes up her defense but collapses from the injury sustained by blocking Tsukasa's attack. Tsukasa decides not to fight, so he leaves the group and heads into the forest. Senku begins to destroy their base. He tells the group they need to fake their exit if they are to successfully make a weapon that will be able to stop Tsukasa. They set out on a journey to find raw materials for their weapon. Tsukasa arrives at the base but catches on instantly to what Senku was trying to achieve. The group arrives at the peak of a mountain. Here Senku tells them they have arrived to obtain gunpowder. Atop the mountain, Teju and Yuzuriha relax in a hot spring. Here, he tells her he would finish their conversation from 3,700 years ago after they bring back civilization. Senku has obtained sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate, which are the materials needed to make gunpowder. They start processing the materials together. Teju accidentally sets off a spark which causes an explosion. Teju is in shock of its explosive power, so Senku verifies that he isn't going to war with Tsukasa, and explains how he plans to use the gunpowder as leverage to make a deal. As they converse, they notice a smoke signal from the forest. Senku realizes that there are other people apart from them in the stone world. They decide to increase the explosion to send their own signal but end up revealing their position to Tsukasa. He quickly adopts Yuzuriha, using her as a bargaining chip to obtain the secret of the revival fluid, so Yuzuriha decides to play the sacrificial lamb. Senku knows he would be killed if he tells Tsukasa the formula, however, he tells him anyway. Tsukasa gives a condition to spare Senku's life if he swears to abandon science. Senku gets a flashback from his childhood. After observing his interest in science, his father sells his car to provide equipment for him. Senku begins trying out different experiments from a young age along with Teju. He even tried building a rock. Senku refuses Tsukasa's proposal. He tells him to make his death painless, so Tsukasa assures him that he'll crush his cervical nerve in one go. Teju runs to Senku's aid but is too late. As they sob, Tsukasa is wary that Teju would confront him in anger. Teju lifts a huge rock which he throws in the air to distract Tsukasa from Yuzuriha, who tosses the newly developed gunpowder. Their actions create a planned explosion. Tsukasa is unhurt by the explosion, but Teju and Yuzuriha along with Senku's body escape successfully. Teju tries different approaches to revive Senku but fails. He recalls a childhood memory. From the memory he realizes that Senku would never actually sacrifice himself for anyone. Teju starts racking his head for clues. They recall that Senku was always cracking his neck all along. They take a look at his body and discover a petrified potion on his neck. The revival fluid is known to heal the areas that are petrified, so they apply some in hopes that it would heal his neck. In his death, Senku relives memories from when he woke up in the stone world. He started making tools to survive from scratch. He acquired sharp objects, ropes, made fire, made clothes, and a mini house for himself. Senku starts feeling the weight of his exhaustion, so he decides to look for a helping hand. He goes to dig up Teju's body. Then he begins looking for clues in order to undo the petrification. He surmised that there had to be an external factor that played a role in his revival, and so he discovers the cave flowing with nitric acid. He tries it on Teju but the petrification doesn't break, so he began experimenting on birds and other humans. Back in the present, it's morning. Teju and Yuzuriha wake up to see that Senku has come back to life. They're excited to see him, and Teju almost breaks his back with a hug. Later, Senku explains to the others that since Tsukasa thinks he is dead, he intends to stay that way. He orders Teju and Yuzuriha to infiltrate his camp as spies. Senku explains that he will go to seek allies with the mysterious people that sent the smoke signal. Tsukasa encounters a lady. She attacks him instantly, although he doesn't have an issue blocking her attacks. She tells him she witnessed him capture Yuzuriha and kill Senku. Tsukasa realizes that she could pose a danger to his goals, so he makes a tree fall on her. Senku rushes to her location to find her trapped under a huge tree, so he begins crafting a pulley which he uses to lift the log off her and set her free. She introduces herself as Kohaku. She tells Senku she has taken a liking to him, but Senku quickly clears the air that he is not interested in relationships. At night, Senku notices that she is on guard. He tells her he wouldn't even think to assault a lioness like her in her sleep. However, Kohaku explains that it's already a habit of hers to be cautious. She tells Senku she would help him defeat Tsukasa by introducing him to more allies. The next day, she goes to fetch some hot spring water to deliver to her village. She hasn't recovered from her battle with Tsukasa, so Senku offers to help her. Surprisingly, he's not able to move the pot, so he makes a contraption to help them move the pot down the hill. They arrive at the entrance of the village. Senku is surprised that so many people are already living there. He is suddenly attacked by two boys but is shielded by Kohaku, who tells them that he saved her life. The boys, called Kinro and Jinro, explain that it's against the village rules to allow strangers in. Senku makes a lot of bubbles using soap, making the warriors are confused as they have never seen such a thing before. Chrome appears on the scene introducing himself as a sorcerer. He figures out that the bubbles are no threat. He then confronts Senku in a duel of sorcery. Chrome makes a fire and begins his sorcery by changing its colors, but Senku isn't impressed by a simple flame test. Chrome moves on to his next party trick where he rubs his hands on a ball of sulfur to create electricity. Senku takes the ball to create a higher voltage of electricity. He is impressed that Chrome was able to achieve so much without modern knowledge. Senku turns his shed into a new base. Inside, he discovers Chrome has picked out all sorts of minerals already. Senku boils some of the minerals and uses the outcome to coat Kinro's spear with gold. He catches on that Senku is trying to bribe him, but he turns him down. At the shed, Senku notices a lot of medicinal plants, and Chrome explains that it is all to cure Ruri, who is Kohaku's sister that's seriously ill. Senku explains to Chrome how the world worked before the petrification. So Chrome decides to cooperate if Senku can find a way to cure Ruri. In the village, news of Senku's arrival starts spreading. They tell Kohaku's father, the village chief, that it was Kohaku who brought in the stranger. Senku explains that he is going to make antibiotics that can cure almost any disease. He explains the steps necessary for them to be able to create the drug. The group heads into the river to collect iron sand using a magnet. Shortly after, a watermelon kid called Suika shows up to assist them. They welcome her as they need all the manpower they can get. After gathering the iron sand, Senku makes a furnace for melting it, and the group begins to blow in air intensely all night. The next day, their effort is wasted because their number could not generate enough heat needed to melt the iron. They decide to recruit more people to generate the necessary manpower. Suika is given the mission to head into the village to determine what would attract people. She returns to give her report, revealing that the pretty girls in the village want a boyfriend, and the village glutton is tired of eating grilled fish every day. On hearing this, Senku decides to cook for the villagers. They start processing millet, after which they are able to achieve millet flour. By adding eggs and other ingredients, Senku transforms the millet flour into ramen. The group enjoys their new meal, but Senku is disappointed by the result. However, they move on to make a food stall that attracts the villagers. Here, they serve the newly acquired ramen to everyone. Kohaku notices an unfamiliar face, so they confront him asking if he works for Tsukasa. Senku recognizes him as a Sajiri Gen, a popular con artist before the Stone World. Gen quickly crafts a story of how he found himself in their midst, but Kohaku doesn't buy it. Senku doesn't care as long as he works for his meal. Senku succeeds in making the villagers work for him, as well as making Gen, who calls himself a mentalist, admit that he works for Tsukasa. He tells Senku he was sent to confirm his death. However, he has a change of heart after seeing Senku's inventions. He explains that he wants to live an easy life, and Senku's science is the only way to achieve that. Senku tells the group they are going to make a generator next. They start salvaging tools for the project, including the village bridge. A girl reports their deeds around the village, so Magma, who's the strongest in the village, arrives to kill Senku. Gen confronts Magma and his group with flowers. He tells them he wants to stop the lightning with magic, and demonstrates by making the flowers in his hands disappear, so they believe him and leave. Senku and the party climb up the mountain. Here they use Kinro's spear as a lightning rod and are able to create a magnet as planned, although at the expense of the rod which Kinro loved. They move on to construct copper plates, and with the magnet, they successfully built a generator. With Gen's help, they are able to recruit Kinro and Jinro to operate the generator. Senku climbs atop the shed, where he connects his copper wires with a bamboo leaf to create an Edison light bulb. The group discusses what to do with a Sajiri Gen. Senku explains that they have to find a way to make Gen report to Tsukasa that he is indeed dead. Gen has mixed thoughts on the issue. He recalls being revived by Tsukasa, and Tsukasa explains that his role is to investigate if Senku is still alive. Back to the present, Gen is attacked by some unknown men. The group rushes out to aid him, but discovers he succeeded in tricking his attackers into believing he died. While he is treated, Suika goes to investigate who the murderer was. She returns the next morning to tell the group the culprit was Magma. They realize that Magma mistook Gen for Senku, who is Kohaku's ally. She explains that the Grand Bout, which is a competition for choosing who would marry the village priestess to become the new chief, was approaching, so Magma is out for her head. The previous year, she joined the competition just to stop him from marrying Ruri, the priestess. Kohaku suggests that their best bet is for someone from their kingdom of science to win the competition so they can be accepted by the village. They approach Jinro and Kinro to be their champions in the competition. Kohaku begins training them, while Senku and Teiju make plans for making the antibiotic. The next morning, Gen heads back to Tsukasa secretly. The group is worried and tries to go after him, but Senku stops them, as he is convinced Gen won't snitch. They had previously made a deal where Senku would make cola for him in exchange for his cooperation. As agreed, Gen reports to Tsukasa that Senku is dead. Senku informs Teiju that they need a very important material to make drugs. He explains that the material needed is glass. He mashes the watermelon on Suika's head, revealing her cute face, which changes drastically. She reveals she has bad eyesight and the watermelon mask makes it better. However, Senku understands her situation. He explains that making glass would remedy her situation. Senku leads the team to begin excavating for materials for making glass, quartz and sand. They mix the acquired sand with a bunch of materials they already have and successfully make glass. Senku does the refraction by polishing the glass until it is suitable for Suika. With her new glasses, she is able to see clearly for the first time. Kohaku continues training Kinro. She easily defeats him when she closes the distance between them. Jinro is aware that he has long-sightedness, but he tells him not to reveal his condition to anyone, saying warriors have no room for excuses. Senku moves on with his glass-making project, but they fail each time. Teiju brings a man to help with the delicate crafting. They make the old man, called Keiichi, watch their failed glass-making attempt, so he gets too excited and offers to help. With his help, they successfully make a lot of glasswares. Jinro and Kinro ask Senku to make them a gold and silver spear each. Senku agrees under the condition that they help him obtain an essential material. Senku makes the silver spear and leads the team to a hot spring area. He tells Jinro the spear is serving as a sensor. He has to notice when the tip turns black or they all die. They explore the area together with Jinro almost passing out from anxiety. Finally, they arrive at their destination, an emerald green spring that Senku explains to contain hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide. Jinro gets enchanted by the spring but is saved in time by Kohaku before he inhales the poisonous gas. They notice how the birds that went close drop dead instantly. After witnessing the danger of sulfuric acid, back at the village, Kohaku volunteers to risk her life to get it. Senku stops her. He tells them a story where a man died instantly when he tried to tie his shoelace because the poisonous gas was below his knee level. He explains to her that she has no chance of survival no matter her speed. Senku tells the group they are going to make gas masks. After making the gas masks, he tells Chrome to stay behind in case the gas mask doesn't work and he ends up dying. Chrome disagrees with his plan, so they settle for a compromise. Senku has successfully made gas masks, so they head to the spring alone, leaving Jinro, who freaked out, behind. They arrive at the spring alone in one piece while old man Keiichi succeeds in giving Jinro a pep talk. He ends up making an extra mask for Jinro. At the spring, Chrome notices that Senku's equipment is damaged. He tries to reach out, but the ground under him caves in instead. He begins falling, but Jinro appears out of the blue to save him with his spear. He succeeds in pulling him out of danger, and the group successfully acquires sulfuric acid. And this brings the anime to an end. Comment if you would like a part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.